So that's why I much prefer wet panning to dry panning. Yes, it's a lot simpler to dry pan because you have to carry water with you, but it really doesn't take as much water as you might think to do some good sampling around an area. For example, we're camped over that hill there on a claim here that I've paid to use for a year, and I walked 2 miles yesterday, probably sampled about 15 or 20 different locations, found some that are better than others, and I did all with wet panning. I took a 2-gallon bucket full of water with me, and when I got back, I probably had used less than 1.5 gallons of it. I still had some left over. And it took me 2 or 3 hours to do the panning tour, so that's quite a bit of usage out of just a very little water to carry around. And you get so much more efficiency, and it's so much faster. It just pays for itself. It's just the better way of doing it, I think. So when I go on a sample panning tour in this vicinity, I know I'm going to walk here because I'm on the claim. So I know I've got a 1/2 mile by a mile that I can walk in. But that covers a lot of different types of terrain. I've got the mountains up here where I had tailing piles that were left in the 30s by what they walked in. I've got the dry creek beds here. I've got smaller tributary creek beds. I've got just plain flat land up there. It has a lot of mineralization showing. So there's a lot of different kinds of terrain and a lot of different methods of prospecting that you would use here depending on where you had the best results with your gold. So when I go on a tour, I go prepared to try all these different little things I like to do. So I take a 5-gallon bucket. I take a 3-fingered garden rake. These work really well for breaking up the rocks and making it so that you can get scoops of dirt up. I take my gold scoop so I can pick things up and put it in my sample pan. I take a 10-inch pan, which I use because it's a lot easier to pan from this pan into the other one without risking losing any. You can pan with a regular sized gold pan, say a 14-inch into a 14-inch, but you're more likely to spill water that way, whereas this will fit a lot better into the pan without risking losing any. We're trying to conserve water because the less you spill, the less you have to carry. So, I take my little pan, I take my big pan to pan into, I take a classifying screen, take a wire brush, which is for getting the dried dirt and the wet dirt off of rocks that just won't come off any other way. I take a broom for sweeping off the rocks that are already dry and that just need to be swept up, or sweeping off the hard pan. A whisk broom with a dustpan. Sometimes this is a lot easier to work with than the other kind of broom. Take 2 types of bars, and these I use for popping rocks open. We'll see about that in a minute. A hammer, so you never know when you're going to need that. And a snifter bottle for finding what you actually collected. Now this is in addition to what you would need to carry, like snakebite kit, food, water, jackrabbit repellent, whatever else you might want to carry with you to make sure you survive the day in the desert. So put that in a backpack. This mostly all fits in a 5-gallon bucket. I put my water in here, or you can carry some milk jugs with water in them, and just start walking. So as you're walking along, in addition to looking for good gold-bearing areas, like places where the stream curves, goes fast and suddenly flattens out, basically the same things you'd look for in a regular creek that had water in it, I'm also going to keep my eye to the ground to watch out for quartz rocks. A lot of the gold that's actually found here in large pieces in this vicinity has quartz in it. So it's like a big chunk of quartz with a little stripe of gold across it, or half and half, or whatever. In this particular claim, supposedly someone found an 8-pound rock that has 7 pounds of quartz and a pound of gold in it a couple of years ago. Those finds are rare. And so you have thousands, millions of pieces of quartz that you can see from right here even. Probably not millions, but a lot. And you can't stop and turn everyone over. And even if you did that all day long, every day, odds are you still wouldn't pay for yourself at the end of the year. But as you're walking along, your eyes have to go somewhere. So always keep an eye down, looking for quartz. You don't want clear quartz. You want quartz that has a little bit of mineralization in it, like it's kind of pinkish, blackish, brownish, something like that. It's kind of ugly looking, because those types of mineralization generally accompany gold when it's formed. So just keep your eye to the ground. Every so often you see a piece of quartz that looks like it's kind of dirty and looks like it might have a glint on it. Pick it up and do like that. Don't spend a lot of time on it, but you never know. Just you gotta look somewhere. You might as well keep an eye out for that. Sometimes you get lucky. This is a good example of the type of mineralization that I'm talking about. See, that's iron ore on the surface of it. You can see yellowish, reddish, blackish spots all around it. Oftentimes the pieces of gold are found in rocks that look like this. Not always. Sometimes they are on the pretty white quartz, but the majority of them are found in things that are ugly like this. So as you go through the desert, you're going to see piles of tailings like this. Now these were mostly left behind by the old-timers from the 1800s or the early 1900s. They left these piles of tailings. You can tell they were not classified because you have big rocks and little rocks and fine rocks. They were mostly looking for coarse gold. They either ran it through a sluice in a wet area. Sometimes they ran it even through a sluice here, or they ran it through other types of dry washing plants, things like that. Anyway, None of those methods were very efficient back then, and so there was a lot of gold that could have been left behind in here. A lot of it is found by amateur prospectors today. Some of it's done with a metal detector, some with dry washing, some with panning, and so on. So these places are good things to sample. As you're going through here, just dig a pile out of here, put it in your pan, wash it out, and keep going. And that's what we're going to do now. So I've got my 3-fingered claw, my scoop, my 2 pans, and my classifying screen. I'm just going to go right up here and pick a spot. This looks fine. And just start scraping down. I'm going to basically fill that little black pan about halfway up. Basically, we're only looking at about a quart of dirt. So you have to factor that in when you're looking at your sample. If you only have a quart of dirt and you get several good-sized chunks of gold, you know that's really good, rich soil that you're working, because you really didn't work very much soil to get that sample. Casually glance at this. Although the odds are pretty low that you're going to find any gold this way, you're much better off taking that sample, scanning it with a metal detector. So now we need to get back down here, someplace flat and comfortable. So this dirt here is a little bit on the clay side. It's kind of got a little bit of stickiness to it. So we're going to wash it with this. It's a good idea to bring an extra bucket of water or an extra container of water, because as it goes through the day, and you pan quite a bit of this water and you reuse the water, then you start to find the water gets pretty muddy. And when you go to pan out your fines, it's very difficult towards the end to even see what you've got in there. And so I like to keep one bucket with the dirty water and another bucket or a smaller container with cleaner water. And so once I get it settled and dump it out here, see how much water I need in this, like so. And this is why it's so much easier to use a smaller pan than the larger pan, because you have room to move around in. Once you get down to the black sand, go a little bit past that usually, and then I put the cleaner water in. Right now all the water is clean, so it's no big deal. But later on that's where I would do that. So getting down lower. Remember, we're sample panning, so this is not trying to do a perfect job, just a fast job. So I'm getting down to the end here, and then I'm just going to look at it real quick and see what I found, and then move on. So, pan it. Okay, so there's nothing there. So that doesn't mean that there is no gold in this pile, but we did a good sample, didn't find anything. We could do another 2 or 3 to be thorough, but at the end of the day, you start losing gold towards the end of it by spending too much time in one place. Sample panning tours need to be fast. You need to find the gold and locate it, and then come back later and spend more time at it. So what we're going to do right now is drain our water back into our bucket without spilling it like that. Do this slowly so you don't get all the dirt with it. Hold the pan like this for a minute, even with your hand down here to help keep stuff from going over. Get as much as you can. The more water you have and the easier it is to get more, the more time you can spend getting all the water out of here. This is all I'm going to do because my camp is just over the hill. And then just take it and toss it. You can see how muddy that is.